Oh, fuck me, that's hot. What's up guys, and welcome back to another ACTV YouTube video. Today I'm going to be walking you through how I made my stop motion ident. But first of all, what is stop motion and what is an ident? Stop motion is a form of animation, where the animator takes a sequence of images and when played together, they create the illusion of movement. And an ident is a short sequence to identify the channel or company's name. Now just before we get into the animation process, let me show you my short little ident that I made. Here it is. Although it was very short, it took me quite a few hours to do, and I had three major processes in making this animation. I had the capture process, the Photoshop process, and the Premiere process. Let's jump straight into the capture process. Welcome to the capture process. So the first thing that I wanted to do was get the idea out of my head and onto some paper. So to get it onto paper, I created a storyboard. After that, it was time to get all the props that I needed ready. So all the props that I needed were a rocket, flames, a planet, and smoke effects. Now that I had made all of those, I could get straight into the capture process. But before we do that, let's set up our equipment. All the equipment I needed was a DSLR, a tripod, and lighting. Lighting's always a good idea so that you can have the same light throughout all of your pictures, which definitely helps in post-production. Remember when setting up your DSLR to go to the image quality settings and set it to NEF RAW plus JPEG Fine, so that every time you take a picture, you have two copies of that picture, one in JPEG and one in NEF RAW. And just like that, with all your equipment set up, you're ready to start shooting. So the first picture I took was with my background and all the props on it, just so that I could make sure my focus, white balance, and lighting was all correct. Once I was happy with the look of my image, it was time to actually start the capture process. So the first proper image I took was a picture of the background and the planet. I slowly started to inch the rocket in, picture by picture. Once the rocket was fully in frame, I was going to add the flames on, but since the flames were too small, I decided to do that in post-production rather. So I took a picture of all of my flames together for later. Every time I took a picture while inching the rocket upwards, I would rotate the planet just a little bit so that it had a bit of movement in it. Once the rocket was about in the middle of the page, I started adding the smoke effects behind it. I just inched them up following where the thrusters would be. I repeated this process over and over until the rocket was out of frame. Then I was just left with the smoke effects. I made them follow the rocket all the way up until it was out of frame, and then I just made them split apart slowly. And now that I had all my images, I took out the SD card from the camera and put it into my computer, and made sure to make a backup of all the images. Once you have all the images and you're happy with all of them, it's time to pack away the equipment. I packed away the DSLR, the lighting, and the tripod. Remember to keep all the props that you need until you're happy with the final product of your project. Now that I had all the images on my computer, it was time to sit down and start the Photoshop process. Welcome to the Photoshop process. The first thing I did was open up my Photoshop. I went File, New, and created a new document. First of all, I named it Stop Motion. Now where it says width and height, I needed to match this to the same dimensions that my pictures had. So what I did to do that was went to my file, right-clicked on one of the images, and went to Properties. Then I went to Details. Under Details, you'll see Image Dimensions. These dimensions are 6016 by 4000. So I went back to my Photoshop and changed the dimensions to the same as my picture. Then I went to Resolution and changed to 300. Then where it said Color Mode, I went with RGB color and 16-bit. Then I went Create. Now it was time to insert one of my first images. I didn't take the first image in my sequence, I took an image that had all my props in it, the smoke effects, my rocket, and my planet. As you'll see with all your images, there will be two of each picture. There will be a JPEG and there will be an NEF file. If you can't see your file extensions, go to the Windows search bar. Type in File Explorer Options. Once you're there, go to the View tab, and then the second last option will be Hide Extensions for Known File Types. Untick that box, click Apply, and click OK. And now you'll be able to see the extensions for each of your files. The NEF file is the file that we're going to want to use. It has a lot better editing system and better quality. So what I did was scroll down until I found an image that had all my props in it. I drag and drop that into my Photoshop. A new window popped up called the Raw Camera window. and it had my image in it with a bunch of options on the right. I slowly went through adjusting the options until I had the perfect options that the whites were nice bright whites and the black was dark black. Once I was happy with all my options, I went to the little 4 lines next to the basic heading. I clicked Save Settings, and then I clicked Save, and I saved it right next to where all my images are, and I saved it under a name called Stop Motion Options, and I clicked Save. This will allow me that every time I drag in a raw image, I'll be able to go to the 4 little lines, click Load Settings, and click on my Stop Motion Options, and it will give the exact same options that I already created, instead of having to do it over and over and over. Now I clicked OK, and I made sure I was happy with my image. Now that I'm happy with the image and the presets that I got, I went back and went to the first image in my sequence. I dragged it into Photoshop, went to the little 4 lines, clicked Load, clicked on the options that I made, clicked Open, and that was them applied. And now I clicked OK. And that is me with my first image done. So I went to the top left of Photoshop, clicked on File, clicked Save As, and then I went to where it says Save As Type, and I went to JPEG. I named it just a simple 1 because this is the first picture in my sequence. Then I clicked Save, and where it says Image Quality, I made it 12 because that is the highest image quality you're able to get. Then I clicked OK, and that was my first image done. I repeated this process over and over until I got to an image that had the thrusters in it. Where the thrusters are, I wanted to add flames, but since they were too small to maneuver with my hands, I decided to put them in post-production. So the way I'm going to do that is going to where I saved the picture of all of my flames. I'm going to drag and drop that into my Photoshop. I'm going to go to the left panel, and the third option will be the lasso tool. I'm going to hold down on that until I get to the second lasso tool and click on that one. This tool will allow me to go right around my flame and cut it out to make it a separate image. So all I'm going to do is click at the bottom left corner and a line will appear. Now I'll drag this line until there's a change in direction and then click on it again. And I'm going to slowly but surely go around my entire image until it is completely cut out. Once my flame is completely selected, I'm going to click Ctrl J to make a duplicate. This makes a duplicate of the layer, but since I just had the flame selected, I made a duplicate of just that single flame. I'm going to redo this process 8 times so that I am able to cut out all my flames. Once I cut out all my flames, I hid all of them by clicking the little eye. Then I went and saw what flames I needed. I need 2 small flames, one for the left thruster and one for the right. So I went to small flame 1 and small flame 2. Then I scaled them up and rotated them to the perfect size that I'll need. This just takes a bit of adjustment. Once I was happy with it, I went and did that to my second flame. And now that's done. But since when taking my picture, the bottom of my image was very blurry. So to make the flames blend in and also be a bit blurry, I went to the top of Photoshop and went to Filter. Then I went to Blur, and then I clicked on Gaussian Blur. A little window popped up, and what I did was slowly adjust it until I thought it was the same amount of blur that I had in my image. Once I found that, I clicked OK. Then I went to my second flame and did the exact same thing. Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And then once you find the right amount of blur, I clicked OK. And that is both of my flames inserted into my picture and blurred. There's one little last step I want to do to them. As you can see, the rest of the props have shadows under them, since they weren't stuck down to the page. So I want to add shadows to my flames as well. I right-clicked on the flame, went Blending Options, and a window popped up. I went down to the bottom where it said Drop Shadow. I went through all the options and adjusted the shadow until it linked up with all the other shadows in the image. And then I clicked OK. And because I didn't want to repeat that process, I right-clicked on the layer that I just put the drop shadow on, and I clicked Copy Layer Style. Then I went to my other flame, right-clicked, and clicked Paste Layer Style. Now our flames are inserted into our image, they have blurs on them, and they have drop shadows. And now that is another one of my images done. I went and saved it. I repeated this process for every single image up until the point of the smoke effects. The smoke effect images were the last images that I wanted to properly edit, because what I wanted to do was add in my Ardent logo. So to make the effect that my logo was appearing from beneath the smoke clouds, what I did was insert my logo on top of the clouds. I positioned it to the middle of the photo where I was happy with it, and then what I did was I went back and took the lasso tool, I hid my logo, and I slowly went around every single smoke effect, and slowly but surely made a selection around all of them. Once I made a selection around my clouds, I selected the logo and clicked delete. And now this makes it look like the logo is beneath the clouds. Then I repeated this process over and over until my logo was completely shown. Now that I have every single one of my pictures edited, it's time for the Premiere phase. So now for the Premiere phase. First things we want to do is open up Premiere Pro. Then I went to New Project and called it Stop Motion. I saved it in a location that I would remember, and I went OK. And then it opened up my workspace. Then I went to where I saved all my edited pictures, selected all 61 of them, and then inserted them into the bottom left window in Premiere by just dragging and dropping them. Then the easiest way that I found to add these into my timeline and have them at the right durations is by selecting every one of them and dragging and dropping them. By doing this, my stop motion is now 5 minutes long. So what I did was select every one of my images, I clicked right click, then I went to speed and duration, and instead of them being 5 seconds long each, I decreased it all the way down to 2 frames each. By doing this, they will go so small that you can barely see them. So what I did was hold down Alt and scroll, and I scrolled in until I was able to see them in my timeline again. Then I went to the right of one of the images to the empty space and clicked it. Then I clicked right click and I selected delete ripple. What this does is delete the empty space between the clip on the right and the clip on the left. So I repeated this process until every one of my pictures were together again. Now our video is only 4 seconds and 20 frames long. We made every single picture 2 frames long, because that is how long most stop motions are, 2 frames per second. Now if you like, you can click play and it'll go through the entire of your stop motion. But what I wanted to do was add in a fade in and a fade out effect. To do this, I zoomed in even more, selected my first picture, right clicked, went to speed and duration, and increased that from 2 frames to 1 second. Now that my first frame is 1 second long, I went to the end and did the same for the last frame. Speed and duration, and I edited to 1 second long. Now first frame and last frame are a second long. Now to make a fade in effect, I made sure I was at the start of my animation. I went to the top left panel where it says Effects Controls, and I went to where it says Opacity. I clicked this little button here, which is a keyframe. I clicked that and made the opacity, instead of being 100%, I made it 0%. Then I went right to the end of the first picture and went to 2 frames before it ended. I went back to where it said opacity and made that 100 again. What this did was make a keyframe at the start and make a keyframe at the end. The keyframe at the start made the opacity 0, and the keyframe at the end made the opacity 100. By doing that, it will start off at 0 opacity, which will be black because there's nothing in our background. Now we'll want to go to the end of our animation and go 2 frames in, click on it, go to the top left, click where it says opacity, make sure it's on 100%, and click a keyframe. Then we'll want to go right to the end of our timeline, go back to opacity, and make it 0 this time. By doing this, it will start at 100 and now go to 0, a fade out effect. Now that we've done this, it's looking really good. Only thing is, we need to add sound, something that brings the animation to life. I only had 2 sounds that I wanted to add to my film. I drag and drop them into the bottom left panel. One was the sound of a shuttle taking off, and the other was just a nice jingle effect sound thing. So what I did is go to where I thought it would sound good. on the top left panel, I clicked I for in, which makes an in point, and then I went to where I would like it to end and clicked O to make an out point. This selects just a part of the clip that you want to add to your timeline. So now that I've created an in and an out point, I drag and dropped this audio into my timeline. Since this audio has a visual track too, you'll want to click on it, right click, and click unlink. Then you go to the visual part of it and just click delete. So now you'll just be left with the audio. Position it to where you would like it, and then I did the same for my rocket sound effect. I made it in and an out point and added that to my timeline. After a bunch of adjustments with the sound, I was able to find the perfect spots for both of them. And now that is all the editing that needed to be done in Premiere. Now it was finally time to export the file. So I went to the top left of the screen where it said File, I went to Export and I clicked Media. A second window will pop up. At the top it will say Format. You'll want to make sure that it's on H.264, and then the preset, you'll want to open up the drop down menu and go to where it says YouTube 1080p HD. By selecting YouTube 1080p HD, it will be HD quality 1080p, and it will be as small of a file size as you can get, because it will be good for uploading. Then where it says output name, you'll want to click on that, name it to what you want to call it. We're just going to call it stop motion final, and when you do this, also select where you want to save it so that you can find it once it's done. Then click save. And now that is everything. Now you just need to click export. It will do its long process and then it'll be exported. And those are the 3 major processes I took to make my stop motion. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something. I'll play my ident right at the end once again for you if you would like to check it out. But I hope you have a good day, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers.